Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Yolanda Curtis Gibson, and I'm a Victim Justice Program Specialist with the Federal, International, and Tribal Division at the Office for Victims of Crime, which we often refer to as OVC for short. I'll be co-presenting today with my colleagues Jessica Andrew and Bethany Kate. So as mentioned previously, here's some information about submitting questions and answers. Throughout the presentation, you're welcome and encouraged to type in any questions you have in the Q&A box on the screen. At the end of the presentation, we'll do our best to answer all of your questions. Additionally, this presentation will be available online at the Department of Justice's Tribal Justice website. The URL for that site is on your screen. Please note that all participants will remain on mute throughout the entire session. Over the course of this webinar, our team will provide an overview of the Office for Victims of Crime and the CTAS solicitation, a description of Purpose Areas 6 and 7, including an explanation of the differences between the two programs, and how to apply for funding under each purpose area. We will also provide some key tips to creating a great application. In this first section, we will provide you with an overview of the Office for Victims of Crime and its role in assisting victims within the tribal community. OVC is charged by Congress with administering the Crime Victims Fund, which is a major source of funding for victim services throughout the nation. Through the Crime Victims Fund, OVC supports victims in tribal communities, victims of international terrorism and mass violence, both here in the U.S. and abroad, victims of human trafficking, state crime victim compensation and assistance programs, national scope demonstration and service projects, as well as training, technical assistance, and information resources. As mentioned previously, OVC supports victims in tribal communities through a number of programs. Some of these programs include the Developing Future Victim Specialists for Indian Country program, the Tribal Mapping Resource Project, Training and Technical Assistance for Tribal Grantees, the Tribal Community Wellness Center, and the two purpose areas that you're learning about today within the Coordinated Tribal Assistance Solicitation. I should also note that our American Indian Alaska Native Training and Technical Assistance Program providers are Fox Valley Technical College and Unified Solutions. If you are awarded funding under CTAS this year, one of those organizations will be your designated training and technical assistance provider. For more information about OVC's other grant opportunities, please visit the OVC website at ovc.gov. In addition to providing grant funding to the field, OVC also develops publications and products on emerging victim issues, promising practices, policy development, and technical assistance and skill building tools. OVC materials are designed to inform and assist victim service providers and allied professionals in their efforts to help crime victims in Indian country. I'd like to highlight two of these products that might be of interest to you. The first is called A Circle of Healing for Native Children Endangered by Drugs. This resource is intended to generate conversation and inspire communities to come together to develop, enhance, and share their own responses to Native children affected by the drug epidemic that is impacting so many communities. I'd also like to highlight a resource called A Healing Journey for Alaska Natives. This 5-video series, produced by both OVC and the Office on Violence Against Women, is designed to educate federal, state, local, and tribal victim service providers, criminal justice professionals, and others who work on issues related to domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking experienced by Alaska Natives. For more information about these and other OVC tribal resources, please visit the website shown on your screen. As part of OVC's ongoing commitment to providing relevant resources and tools to Indian country professionals, the OVC Training and Technical Assistance Center has created a site to help guide tribal victim advocates, prosecutors, law enforcement officers, judges, and others to information about how to create a victim-centered response to American Indian and Alaska Native victims of crime across the lifespan. The full web address for this site is on your screen. We invite you to explore this site and to learn more about available federal and non-federal resources that can help tribal communities better meet the needs of victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, elder abuse, and many other forms of victimization. So now that I've had a chance to share some information with you about OVC's projects and resources, I'll move to talking specifically about CTAS. Under CTAS, the Department of Justice provides funding for 9 different purpose areas, which are noted on your screen. Each component is funded in different ways and in different amounts. That accounts for the difference in the number of awards. These purpose areas are DOJ's tribal government-specific competitive grant program. Applicants may select the purpose areas that best address their tribe's concerns. Grant funding under these purpose areas are related to public safety, criminal and juvenile justice, and the needs of victims and survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and other forms of violence. We've included this chart to offer some insight into the competitiveness of the award-making process for CTAS in general and for purpose areas 6 and 7 in particular. Highlighted in purple, you'll see Purpose Area 6, which is the Children's Justice Act Partnerships for Indian Communities program. In 2017, we received 33 applications and 6 were awarded. Under Purpose Area 7, which is also highlighted in purple, you'll see the Comprehensive Tribal Victim Assistance Program. In 2017, we received 26 applications and 18 of those were awarded. This year, looking at the numbers, OVC expects to award up to 6 applicants under Purpose Area 6 and up to 30 applicants for Purpose Area 7. You might be wondering why under Purpose Area 6, only 6 awards will be awarded. The Children's Justice Act, or CJA, provides up to $20 million to be allocated annually with the purpose of improving the investigation and prosecution of child abuse and neglect cases at the state, tribal, and local levels. However, the Department of Health and Human Services receives 85% of these funds for its child abuse programs and services. OVC is left with 15% of that to support the CJA Partnerships for Indian Communities grant program, and this helps American Indian and Alaska Native communities improve the investigation, prosecution, and management of child abuse cases in a manner designed to lessen additional trauma. The program further supports the development and implementation of comprehensive programs for abused children, as well as child-sensitive and child-centered policies and procedures for handling child abuse cases in tribal courts and child protection services systems. In FY 2018, OVC has set aside $2.7 million to support 6 awards of up to $450,000 each. If you are considering applying for Purpose Area 6, but your proposal does not include prosecution or investigation of child abuse and neglect cases, OVC highly recommends that you consider applying under Purpose Area 7. In Section 2, we're going to provide an in-depth overview of Purpose Areas 6 and 7, explain the goals and objectives of each purpose area, provide examples of different projects funded, and provide an overview of allowable and unallowable costs. By providing funding through the CJA program since 1989, OVC has worked with tribal communities to enhance their capacity to address the needs of child abuse victims. Through this program, tribes have an opportunity to intervene in the cycle of abuse and trauma that keeps so many Native children from thriving. Ultimately, the goal of CJA Purpose Area 6 is to provide funding, technical assistance, and training to help American Indian and Alaska Native communities develop, establish, and operate programs that are designed to improve the investigation, prosecution, and handling of cases of child abuse and neglect. This purpose area places a special emphasis on child sexual abuse cases and handling them in a manner which lessens trauma for child victims, supports comprehensive and coordinated multidisciplinary responses to child abuse victims, and provides trauma-informed services to these victims and their families. CJA has 3 program objectives. The first is to improve investigative, prosecutorial, and judicial practices to minimize traumatic stress to victims of child abuse and neglect. Such improvements might include allowing an advocate to accompany a child victim to court so that they can provide emotional support, or preparing child victims to participate in the court process by developing appropriate language and resources. The second objective is to provide emergency services for children who are at imminent risk of harm and to provide crisis intervention services. And the last objective is to develop specialized services for child victims and their non-abusing family members. An example of this service might be providing trauma-focused counseling. On the screen, you'll see some examples of projects that can be funded under CJA. These might include a court-appointed special advocate program, a child forensic interviewer, pediatric SANE or sexual assault nurse examiners, a child advocacy center, or a special crimes against children investigator or prosecutor. Please note again that if your proposal does not include prosecution or investigation activities, we definitely encourage you to consider applying under Purpose Area 7. So some of the activities that can be funded under this award include staffing, so salaries and fringe benefits costs for a number of positions, but some of these positions might include dedicated prosecutors, specialized law enforcement investigators, child protection services personnel, forensic interviewers, case managers, clinical mental health professionals, pediatric sexual assault nurse examiners, and other allied professionals. Just please keep in mind that all personnel must be clearly linked to victim assistance program activities as justified under this purpose area. In addition to supporting personnel, funding can be used to provide victim assistance services that are linked to the child victimization, as well as services for their non-abusing family members. Victim assistance may include, but is not limited to, developmentally appropriate trauma-informed counseling for individual victims, as well as counseling for secondary victims like siblings and grandparents, family therapy, group therapy, case management services, aid with participating in traditional healing ceremonies or other cultural activities, assistance with food, clothing, and transportation costs, emergency shelter services, assistance with crime victim compensation claims, and medical and dental care. Costs associated with prevention activities are not allowable. And you can also use grant funding to pay for outreach and awareness activities. These can include the creation of public service announcements, posters, brochures, fact sheets, all of those different kinds of things about different types of victimization that impact children, how to report and seek help, as well as materials about your specialized program. Continuing on, other activities that can be funded under this award include cultural and traditional practices, which I touched on before. This can include things like smudging, sweat lodges, or other traditional healing ceremonies for child victims as well as their non-abusing family members. You can use grant funding to pay for the enhancement of existing or new equipment and technology that's exclusively related to this CJA program. And examples of that include supplies for play therapy, forensic interview recording equipment, digital cameras, etc. And you can also use grant funding to pay for travel and training. Funding can be used to send grant-funded staff to trainings or conferences that are relevant to the handling, investigation, and prosecution of child abuse and neglect cases. Your budget must include funds to attend at least 3 OVC-related trainings, and those trainings are the Indian Nations Conference, the New Grantee Orientation, and an OVC regional training. Please note that this is just an overview and that there's additional information about what can and can't be funded under this award starting on page 37 of the solicitation. On the screen, you'll see some activities that Purpose Area 6 funding cannot be used for. These include activities that are described as primary prevention, which is basically activities to serve victims before abuse actually occurs, construction-related costs, as well as offender treatment or intervention programs. So some of the things I'd like for you to take away as it relates to funding under Purpose Area 6 are that Projects must support child abuse, neglect, and/or child sexual abuse victims. If your proposal does not include prosecution or investigation activities, please consider applying under Purpose Area 7. Please also keep in mind that funding cannot exceed $450,000 and that the project period is only for 3 years. So if you are awarded fiscal year 18 funding, your project period will be October 1st, 2018 to September 30th, 2021. And unfortunately, project period extensions cannot be given. So that concludes my part of the presentation. I'll now turn it over to Jessica Andrew, who will provide an overview of Purpose Area 7.
Good afternoon, everyone. As my colleague Yolanda indicated, my name is Jessica Andrew, and I am also a Grants Management Specialist with OVC. And today I'm going to be discussing Purpose Area 7, the Comprehensive Tribal Victim Assistance Program, also known as CTDA or Purpose Area 7, PA7. Purpose Area 7 differs from Purpose Area 6 because through this program you have a unique opportunity to address the needs of crime victims across their lifespan and across all different types of crime. So the goal of this program is to create, enhance, and sustain a comprehensive victim assistance program. The big question is, what is comprehensive victim assistance? Basically, it is taking a standard program and enhancing it and adding to it to provide a comprehensive approach to address the needs of these victims. So it can be providing direct advocacy, counseling services, emergency shelter, mental health services, educational support, again, providing comprehensive victim assistance to these victims of crime. So taking that comprehensive approach leads us to the program objectives. It's working collaboratively with the community stakeholders, meaning that you're working with the tribal, local, state, federal partners in the community to achieve a multidisciplinary response to serving victims of crime. Number 2 is going to identify the critical needs of crime victims and to develop a program that fills those gaps within your community. And you do this by developing and implementing a trauma-informed approach to responding to victims. And lastly, by working with your stakeholders and identifying those critical needs for your victims, you'll provide direct services to victims and their families. Like Purpose Area 6, I wanted to highlight a couple of different CTDA projects that we have or have had in the past to give you an idea of what kind of projects can be funded under this award. We have sexual assault programs such as providing funding to SANE nurses, projects that specialize in addressing the needs for elder abuse or teen dating violence. Funding can also be used for domestic violence shelters or child advocacy centers, and most commonly we support projects that provide comprehensive services to all victims of crime. Now you can see we have a couple of different child-focused programs on the screen. I can't stress this enough, and Yolanda stressed this as well. If your proposal does not include investigation or prosecution, consider applying under CTDA. Now we're going to be taking a look of what our grant funds can be used for. Looking at salary and fringe, you can include costs for employees who oversee and provide assistance to victims of crime and who also support the project. So some examples are going to be victim advocates, case managers, response team coordinators, or even a project director who oversees the project. Next on the list, we have comprehensive assistance. And this is going to include case management, mental health treatment, assistance with victim compensation claims, substance abuse and alcohol treatment, independent living skills, things like that. Next on the list, you have coordination and outreach and awareness and education. And it's going to be similar to CJA. These funds can be used to develop written protocols, create PSAs, posters, brochures, and these are going to be designed to increase the public's awareness and understanding about the victims you're serving. Continuing on, OVC also understands the importance of providing cultural and traditional practices to victims and their families to support their healing process. A couple of examples that you can include are sweat lodges, talking circles, healing ceremonies, smudging. Also on the list, we have equipment and supplies. These are pretty basic and include anything that you would need to enhance or implement your program. So you have computers, fax machines, printers, scanners, cleaning supplies for the shelter, things like that. And then lastly, you have travel and training. Funds can be used to attend victim-related topics and training. OVC does require, just like with Purpose Area 6, that you budget for at least 3 different OVC-related trainings. And again, that's going to be Indian Nations, the CTAS orientation, and a regional training. And please note that these are just a highlight, and more information can be found in the solicitation. And then lastly, I'm just going to briefly go over what's unallowable under CTBA and what grant funds can be used for. The number one unallowable activity, you've heard me say this a couple of times, funding cannot be used to support investigation or prosecution activities. So again, if you have a child victim program that you would like to hire a dedicated investigator or a prosecutor, please apply for Purpose Area 6. Also unallowable are primary prevention efforts. When you think of primary prevention, you think of proactive strategies that focus on before a person has acquired the risk factors to perpetrating like sexual violence or abuse. So again, unfortunately, under our statute, these are unallowable activities under this award. Also unallowable is going to be the treatment or intervention programs for offenders. And lastly, construction is also unallowable. So that wraps up my overview for Purpose Area 7. I definitely talked a lot, so to summarize, here are the main takeaways that you want to remember. Purpose Area 7 focuses on a comprehensive approach to serving victims. Funding cannot exceed $450,000, and project periods are only going to be a 3-year period. Due to our VOCA statute, project period extensions will not be granted. So you must complete your project within that 3-year time period. So switching gears just a little bit, we're now going to review the application timeline, the award timeline, and give you some updates about CTAS and the application process. Most of this information was covered in the CTAS application overview webinar that was held on January 9th. So if you want more information, definitely visit the Tribal Justice website for all that. Very basic on this screen, the solicitation opened on January 3rd, 2018, and it'll close on March 20th, 2018. For the good stuff, this is going to be the award timeline. The award announcements will go out by September 30th, 2018, and projects are going to be starting on October 1. And again, these projects last 3 years and will end on September 30th, 2001. Just to reiterate, no project extensions will be given, so again, 3-year projects. On this slide, we're going to be talking about eligibility under both Purpose Area 6 and 7. Those who are eligible to apply are federally recognized tribes and organizations that are authorized designees, Alaska Native villages or corporations, tribal consortiums, and one thing I will note on the screen, fiscal year 2017 awardees. These awardees are not eligible to apply for funding under the same purpose area. So for 2 consecutive years, you cannot do that. If you have a 2017 Purpose Area 7 award, you can apply for Purpose Area 6, but again, you cannot do the same purpose area for 2 consecutive years. So what's different for fiscal year 2018 in the solicitation? Over the past 8 years, through numerous meetings, tribal written comments, face-to-face tribal consultation, focus groups, and listening sessions, the DOJ has continued to refine CTAS. So on the screen, we have a couple of new updates, and again, these are going to be specific towards Purpose Area 6 and 7. First on the list, we have the Q&A templates. These are going to be the program narrative questions. They've been updated, so the questions are different. They've been reordered, so make sure you're using the new template, and that's going to be found on the Tribal Justice website. Project abstracts for each purpose area are now required, and as an FYI, they are not scored. So they are required but not scored. And some good news, the demographic form, which is attached to the budget detail worksheet, is no longer required. Also, the budget detail worksheet has been updated, so thanks to our IT folks, they're now user-friendly, and they've addressed some of the bugs from last year. So this slide is very important. The following information must be included in your application. And we say this because these items are required and they're scored during the application process. So if you do not have your tribal community justice profile, your purpose area narrative, the budget detail worksheet, and the project timeline, it's possible you may not be considered for funding. So please make sure you include all of those documents. All those documents can be found in the solicitation and also on the Tribal Justice website. And if you have any questions regarding those documents, please just let us know. Also on the screen, there is a very long list of what should also be included in your application. So please take a look and see what is needed. The tribal authority or tribal resolution is needed. If you are applying for indirect cost rates, please submit the necessary documents. And then you have things like the disclosure for high-risk status, pending application, and lobbying activities. That should also be submitted with your application. For more information, please see Section F of the CTAS solicitation, and for more information on that. And I'm going to wrap up on how to apply. Again, many of you know this. All applications must be submitted through GMS. Only one application package per tribe will be accepted. So basically, if your tribe has 4 different proposals that they want to submit, you must all come together and submit all 4 proposals under one application package. Applications must be submitted by 9 p.m. Tuesday, March 20th, and remember to register for GMS, and then also you have to apply. So please do not wait until the last minute to do this. Submit your application early. So that wraps it up for me. I'm now going to pass the mic over to my colleague Bethany Case, who will finish out our presentation for us.
Hello, everyone. You're almost there, and you'll be very pleased to know that I will be the quickest. So I'm Bethany Case, and I work here at OVC. I'm so pleased to be with you here today. Really, on behalf of the OVC tribal team, we really enjoy working with our partners across the nation and tribes and every part of the country to work with you. We've learned so much. Today I'll be sharing some of our tips for making your application stand out from the good applications. We encourage you to be great. So we're going to talk a little bit about our ideas about that. So earlier in today's webinar, we discussed the required documents. So you'll see these 4 required documents highlighted here on this slide, meaning that these documents must be submitted with your application. If these documents are not submitted, your application will not move forward for further review and consideration. So you might wonder, what does it take to make a great application? And the key is to make sure all of these items are cohesive. Make sure that all of these documents build upon one another and feeds into the next, so that really your full application package reflects a really clear snapshot of what you're looking to undertake. When you're finalizing your draft application, find other staff to review and provide you critical feedback. We've all been there, done that, been working on something for a really long time, and our eyes are tired, and we just can't see things that a new, fresh set of eyes can do. So reach out, seek feedback. It always helps to shape and improve applications. Don't wait until the last minute. You've got time. Start working on it right now.
Folks tend to get, really anxious as the time draws near, and they make some really, unfortunately, just really minor mistakes that cost them further consideration. So don't wait. Follow the instructions and be clear to use the current versions of documents and guidelines that Jessica discussed earlier in this webinar. Your budget is critical. It needs to be solid, thorough, accurate, and based on what you need. So today we've discussed on this webinar this 3-year timeline, starting on October 1st and then ending on September 30th, 3 years later. So be sure that your budget reflects that 3-year timeline. You will not be granted an extension because this is language that's in OVC's statute, the Victims of Crime Act, and we have no ability to grant extensions. So be sure that your budget matches up with what you can really do in those 3 years. And finally, be sure you submit everything. So do you have any of the following victim-related assessments? Many of you have conducted community needs assessments. You've developed logic models, and you've created these awesome comprehensive strategic plans. So if you have them, please include them with your application. And think through, what have you learned through these assessments? And then tell us in your narrative about how these plans and these assessments will help you take the next step for your program. It's really important to OVC to see how your program is growing and developing and enhancing. So a little bit about the budget. Be sure you do the math, calculate, recalculate, get someone to double check your calculations. Your budget detail worksheet is the entire Excel document. You will want to show the total cost of an item and how it was calculated. So you'll need to break down those total costs. And you'll need a brief narrative that explains how the costs were estimated and how they're relevant to your project. So be sure the proposed costs are clearly linked to your program narrative. Be sure that the costs clearly support the activities you expect to undertake. And again, be sure that you can really undertake this in a 3-year time period, and be sure that every cost that you're proposing is necessary, reasonable, allowable, according to the program solicitation. So some of our common budget mistakes. These are just those silly minor mistakes that we've noticed over the years, and unfortunately they can really affect an application's ability to move forward. We've noticed that detail worksheets are missing, budget detail worksheets. We've noticed that computations are incorrect. We've noticed that unallowable costs are included. Please do not include unallowable costs. We are all guided by different federal statutes that really outline what our ability to fund certain items. And so OVC has really clearly described in our solicitation what our allowable expenses are. We've noticed that cost breakdowns are not provided by category or included. The budget narrative is incomplete or unclear. And finally, oftentimes folks forget to attach their current approved indirect cost rate agreement. So we know that can be a challenge sometimes, particularly if you're in the process of renegotiating that. But please submit what you have and make it as current as possible. If you need more information, visit the Tribal Justice website. Here you're going to see all of our updates on the CTAS solicitation. You'll find fact sheets and frequently asked questions. You'll see samples of successful applications. You'll see all of our webinars, which I'll talk about in a moment. And you can sign up for emails. Here's the link right here to where you can go to find out more. So as you may know, CTAS is sponsoring 10 different webinars that will familiarize applicants with the CTAS application requirements for specific purpose areas, as well as meeting grant budgetary requirements and preparing strategies to access grant funds to strengthen tribal justice system capacity. As you can see from this timeline, we're more than halfway through the webinar series. So you may have missed some, but that's okay. We have good news for you. If you missed a session, these webinars are available. They've been recorded and they're available for you to watch on the Tribal Justice website. The link is on the screen, and there are two webinars in particular that we highly recommend for everyone, and that is the budget development session, so the second webinar listed on here, as well as the Accessing Grant Funds webinar. So check it out. We have two key contacts for you. So first, if you have any technical experience, any technical issues when submitting your application in the grants management system, because GMS, grants management system, is where you'll be submitting all of your application materials, we have a GMS help desk. And so their telephone number and email address are listed here. So that's who you contact for those technical issues with submitting something into GMS. If you have questions about the solicitation or you need some general assistance or clarification with the document, we ask that you contact the second contact here on this PowerPoint slide, the DOJ Response Center. And their contact information is here, and they will be happy to assist you. And finally, should you have any questions specific to purpose areas 6 or 7, please feel free to reach out to my colleagues, Yolanda and Jessica, that you heard from earlier today. And here's their contact information. So now, I promised I'd be quick. I think I was. So now we'd like to spend the rest of our time really kind of turning it over to you all as an opportunity for you to ask questions, seek clarification, and we'll do the best that we can to get you answers or follow up with you when we don't have the answer right now.
Thank you, Bethany. Okay, we are going to move over into the question and answer portion. I have already switched your screen view over, and while you're typing in your questions into the question and answer pod, I'd like to bring your attention to the webinar survey. It is in the left-hand corner of your screen. Please, before you leave today, fill the webinar survey out for us, highlight the webinar, and then you can click Browse To. It would automatically populate up into your browser. We really appreciate your feedback. And again, the presentation for download is in the next pod next to it. You just upload or download the file. And if you have any questions, you can also contact the DOJ Response Center at tribalgrants@usdoj.gov or call them toll-free at 1-800-421-6770. And we have a question in the question and answer pod. The salary and fringe for Purpose Area 6 must still not to be more than 50% of the total funds requested.
Can you repeat that question, please, Kendra? We're not seeing it on the screen.
The salary and fringe for Purpose Area 6 must still not to be more than 50% of the total funds requested.
Okay. It shouldn't be less than 50%. We're concerned that the majority of your grant funding goes to direct victim assistance. So if you have 2 positions and it is more than 50%, but they're directly related to providing direct victim assistance under the purpose area, then that's fine.
Okay, so we still have time. If you have any questions you have for the presenters, You can type them in now. Another question, can salary increases be allotted?
Yes, under both purpose areas.
Can you please repeat that? Can salary increases?
Yes, it can be included under both purpose areas 6 and 7. Please just make sure that those increases are accounted for in your initial budget.
Great, thank you. Also, for everyone, additional information, the budget worksheet completion webinar that's going to be held on February 8th is specifically for tribes applying for Purpose Area 1, and that is COPS. All right, we still have about 17 minutes remaining. Any questions for the presenters, please include them in the question and answer pod. Another question coming through, is it allowable to request for petty cash?
No, but you can request funds to be used for emergency assistance to help victims. So I'm not sure if whoever asked the question was concerned about having a stash of funds to provide emergency food, clothing, shelter. For those purposes, yes, but petty cash in and of itself, no. If the person who asked the question about petty cash could elaborate more, maybe we can provide a more detailed response.
Mary Zuni, if you can please add additional information to make sure that your question. All right, Mary has elaborated. She says, oftentimes money is spent out of our own pockets when victims and their family are hungry and incident has occurred over the weekend when our tribal administration is closed. And this is in response to her, is it allowed to request for petty cash?
Well, that sounds like more of a procedural issue. So yes, if a victim specialist or someone employed under the grant spends their own money to provide emergency assistance to a victim, then yes, they can be reimbursed using grant funding. But you have to have a budget line item in your grant for emergency assistance in order for them to be reimbursed. I hope that answers that question.
Okay, and next question, are stipends allowed?
Stipends for who? Stipends for who? We need more information about that.
Okay, Bonnie put presenters / facilitators for a cultural program.
To that is yes. We would consider that a speaker fee according to DOJ, and there is a limit to the amount that you can pay in our DOJ financial guide. That's $650 per day. It doesn't necessarily mean you should go up that high, but generally speaking, if the speaker is relevant to your program and is talking about a victim-related topic, yes, it's allowable.
Okay, we have one more. Is the disclosure of high-risk status a self-certification or is an official audit letter required?
If you could send that last question regarding the high-risk status to the response center, we would appreciate it and we can get you a response. The DOJ Response Center, and that email address is tribalgrants@usdoj.gov. There's also a phone number you can call. That's 1-800-421-6770.
Next question. For required travel, the orientation is only in year 1. Then the regional meetings and conference will be in years 1 through 3.
So yes, you are only required to attend the orientation in year 1. The conference, the Indian Nations Conference, is held every other year, so you don't need to budget for that every year. It's usually held in the even year. So the next time it'll be 2018 and then 2020. And in regional meetings, you should budget for that every year. We don't have an exact schedule for that right now, but every year.
Another, we need clarification. Is regional meetings every year? Just clarifying.
It depends on the year. Sometimes it's every other year, sometimes it's every year. Just to be sure, I would recommend budgeting for every year. Indian Nations is every other year. If you receive funding this year, you'll be required to attend Indian Nations both in December 2018 and December 2020.
Any additional questions today for the presenters? Please include them in the question and answer pod. We'll stay on for a couple more minutes. And please do not forget to fill out the webinar survey before you log off today. Also, an email of this presentation will be emailed to you tomorrow.